Shalom. Welcome to the Chai Academy, being broadcasted live from the Chai Center. As for those of you who are familiar, this is probably our 200th class or discussion, and we are in the middle of talking about fascinating Jewish personalities. Now, you can feel free to ask questions in the comments, or if you have anything to anything to add, please, by all means. So yesterday, the last class, we spoke about Rabbi Wise, Stephen Wise, a rabbi, very influential rabbi who did a lot of good, did a lot of bad. Today we're going to be speaking about a couple, which is really, I think in many respects, hurt the Jewish people. Ethel and Julius Rosenberg. It's interesting. The tail end of the story is that they were the only American citizens to be executed in the United States because of treason, because of spying. So it is so while it was a terrible story, you do have to wonder, why FDR wanted them dead. But so Ethel and Julius Rosenberg, they're both born in New York City and in Manhattan. And Julius, at a tender young age, became a leader in the Youth Communist League. Now, the Youth Communist League was clearly it was to try and influence people to see it from the communist perspective, and by learning Marxism, getting involved in communism. And he was actually Julius Rosenberg was a leader. Ethel, she was an aspiring actress. Didn't really work out. She joined. She became employed by a shipping company. There was different issues, labor issues, and she got involved in the Youth Communist League, and they married. And he, by the way, Julius got involved in 1939. In 1940, he got hired by the Army Signal Corps, where his job was an engineer inspector. Basically, this Signal Corps was electronics and communications and sonar, radar, etc. And while he was there for 5 years, he was a supervisor. Actually, he inflicted a lot of damage. And there's a book, a fascinating book, by a fellow by the name of Ferguslov. I believe that's how you pronounce it. Who Ferguslov was actually a Russian guy, and he was Julius Rosenberg's handler. And if you look at this book, it's clear. There's without a doubt. Even Rosenberg's kids admitted that they were spies. At least Julius was a spy, and it really proves their guilt. He actually gave, in this time that he was in the Army Signal Corps, he gave up the secrets to the Russians of something about the proximity fuse, which is a detonator for bombs. He gave over the plans to the Russians. He was charged and proven that he was a recruiter, and he was like a master ringleader of this communist spy ring, and he recruited many engineers as spies. One of them he recruited, his last name was Pearl. I don't remember his first name, and basically Pearl, who was recruited. Why anybody, by the way, would why any army? First of all, why would anybody be a spy for the Russians? I mean, it defies logic. What would inspire you to go against your own country? What would inspire you to do so? That's A. B, what would inspire you to be a communist? It just, it does. We know communism is something. When I became a citizen of the United States, because I was born in London, England, so I had to sign that I'm not part of the communist movement, and communist movement is anathema to United States. So what? But what would inspire the Army, the Signals Corps, the Army Signals Corps to hire somebody who clearly was in the Young Communist League and ahead? Anyway, Pearl actually divulged the secrets of the P-80, which the P-80 was the first jet fighter, and it was given to the Soviets by Pearl, who was recruited by Rosenberg, by Julius Rosenberg. Ethel, Ferguslov, it was Julius's handler, told Julius that he has to recruit Ethel's brother because he was an engineer and he was working on something called the Manhattan Project, which is nuclear bombs, atom bombs. And so Julius told Ethel. Ethel recruited her brother, whose name was David Greenglass. And David Greenglass was a spy because of Ethel recruited him, and he gave to the Soviets the nuclear strategies and plans and architectural plans. I don't even know what I'm talking about. But he gave them the secrets, and because of him, it is proven that the Soviets were able to develop nuclear capability at an extremely rapid pace. It was mind-boggling. The United States were trying to figure out how, because at that time the United States only had, well, the only ones that had these nuclear capabilities, and in 4 years the Soviets had full nuclear capability, and they blame it on David Greenglass, the brother-in-law of Julius Rosenberg. He was kicked out of the army, Julius, the Army Signal Corps, after 5 years, once they found his association. And he couldn't inflict damage himself, but his ring did a lot of damage. In June 1950, David Greenglass was arrested and charged with treason. And David spilled the beans. David said that his brother-in-law recruited him, etc., and his brother-in-law and sister recruited him, and his brother-in-law spoke to Ethel. Ethel spoke to Ruth, who was David's wife. Ruth convinced David to spy. To me, once again, it's above my pay grade. I can't wrap my mind around people convincing other people to be spies. I just can't. If you have any insight, that's, leave a comment here, because I just can't. So this one recruited this one, and recruited this one, and convinced this one, right? So he spilled the beans. He pointed to Julius and Ethel Rosenberg. A grand jury was convened, and was there money involved? Yes, Lenny, there was absolutely money involved. I mean, some of the secrets that the Rosenbergs were paid was $100. Now, granted, $100 in 1940 was probably the equivalent of, what do you think, 10,000? But yes, there was money involved. So yeah, I guess money talks, everything else walks. Maybe that is, I just, once again. Anyway, so once a Greenglass pointed to Ethel and Julius, they were arrested, and a grand jury was convened. And at the grand jury, when, more and more, just based on Ethel's testimony, Julius's testimony, and others, more and more do they realize what a kingpin Julius was. And they decided, and this is basically they decided that they're going to hover the death penalty over Julius because they felt that that would make him talk. But they had a very weak case against Ethel. So Edgar Hoover says, you got to find this woman guilty. Because if you find a woman guilty, first of all, that's a huge message. Secondly, it will make Julius talk more. So what happened was actually incredible. So Ruth and David were both charged with treason. Ethel and Julius were both charged with treason. David said that he gave information to Julius about the various bombs, the one that was the big bomb and the little bomb, Hiroshima versus Nagasaki. One was a bigger bomb, etc. He gave it to Julius on a street corner of New York City. But in exchange for testimony, and being rewarded that no charges will be filed, what he said was, and he recanted his testimony. He goes, no, I didn't give it to Julius on a street corner. I gave it to them in their house, and a lot of it was handwritten. And Ethel proceeded to type it up. So she typed up various notes, and so she was just as culpable. And he struck a deal that Ruth would go free, and David would not get the death penalty. What's the truth? The first case, he said he gave it to Julius in the street corner. Then he said, no, Ethel was involved also. So both Julius and Ethel were now facing the death penalty. And they were charged. The lawyer, Bloch was his name, asked, can Ethel go home to her young minor children for a weekend just to get them situated and just to say their goodbyes? Not Julius, just Ethel, the mother. And they wouldn't give them parole even 2 days. Even 2 days. So the kids really never, once this trial took place, the Ethel never went home, even for a day. So in March of 1951, the trial began, and David Greenberg was the expert test witness, and he said that clearly I gave over the secrets of the atomic bomb to Julius. And he reiterated that it was typed up, and then Julius took the typed up notes into the typed up notes into the bathroom, and he said, Ethel, wonderful job, etc., etc. Now Ethel and Julius were told, if you talk, we will take off the death penalty. Take it off the table. Unlike the rat David, Ethel and Julius never spoke. And what they said is, if we speak, then we're admitting guilt. If we don't speak, then you perhaps will kill an innocent person or innocent people, but we're never going to talk. And they were hereby sentenced to death. So basically, Ethel and Julius says that, it's your version of the story. We're not going to talk because we're not going to give you our version of the story other than we're innocent. When they were sentenced to death, there were protests all over. And the protests were probably accurately one of anti-Semitism. The protests were larger in Western Europe as opposed to the United States. Yes, in the United States there were protests, but nowhere near like there were, because I think the United States, the Jews in the United States said, holy moly. Holy moly. They were Jews, and they gave away their secrets. We're in bad shape. We are in bad shape. So their testimony was I mean, their protests were much lighter than the protests in the USA were much lighter than the ones in Western Europe. What's interesting to note that the ACLU, which were primarily Jews, even today, right? The ACLU did not take upon themselves the cause to stop the death penalty, where normally they would. What they said was, we don't see any civil liberties being impinged on or infringed on. So the ACLU did not get involved. The death penalty was going to be held on Shabbat, Friday night, at Sing Sing prison. To delay it, their attorney Bloch and another attorney, I forget her name, but Sklar maybe. So another attorney, they went to the judge, whose name was Kaufman, and says, you execute them at 11 p.m. on a Friday night. It's Shabbat. It's a complete infringement. It was just a delay. Oh, sorry, I have insomnia. A delay tactic. And they said, how could you? So Judge Kaufman says, all right, let's make it earlier then. Instead of saying, oh, we can't do it, and Sing Sing only did it on Friday nights. So he said, let's make it earlier. And they made it in a summer's night, right, at 8 p.m. No problem, no conflict. And the night before, there were vigil of hundreds of people. They both were sentenced to the electric chair. Julius died immediately. The first shock, he was dead. Ethel was not so lucky. So after 3 shocks, they stopped. A doctor came, and the doctor said, nope, her heart is still beating. So they gave another 2 shocks to Ethel, and according to witness testimony, her body was actually smoking, and she was put to death. At the funeral, 500 people were let in at the funeral, and there were over 10,000 people who were outside. And she was buried at Wellwood Cemetery, right near where I'm located. Wellwood Cemetery. That's where they were buried, in a Jewish cemetery, and they were buried. Now they had 2 minor children who were adopted, and who took on the name. One was Michael, one was Robert. They took on the name Morapol. I believe he was a poet, and they took on that name. And in 2001, David Greenglass recanted and said, no, Ethel had nothing to do with this. And it was only Julius. So they said, so why'd you do it? Why'd you do it? He goes, because my wife comes before my sister. Ruth comes before Ethel. And he said there was self-preservation. So it seems like that Ethel was put to death when it truly was a weak case against Ethel. Her children, Robert and Michael, went crazy. They said, our mother, okay, we have to get her pardoned. We have to get her commuted. So they tried with Obama, and Obama refused. They tried with other administrations, Trump, he refused. And they're actually trying now to with Biden to have Ethel exonerated. However, at first, before David Greenglass's testimony, and he recanted that Ethel had nothing to do with it. Before that time, Robert and Michael were saying our parents were innocent, our parents were innocent, our parents were innocent. Once the book came out, and once Green Glass's the testimony came out, they already never said their parents were innocent. But then when Green Glass spoke, they realized that their parents were spies, but Ethel didn't deserve to be put to death. And that's what they want exonerated. Excuse me. Excuse me. If you're just coming in, I have a terrible insomnia. So I have this this issue. So Robert and Michael, are still alive today, and they're trying. But you can actually visit the grave in Wellwood if you so desire. I personally don't have the inclination. To be honest, I'm a little embarrassed, and I'll tell you why. In the Code of Jewish law, it talks about that you have to respect the country you live in. Dina d'machusa dina. You have to respect, and you can't do anything to violate the laws. Nothing. There's a caveat. If the law of the land, if New York State or New York City came up with a ruling that you can no longer circumcise your babies at 8 days old, but rather either no circumcision or it has to be held on the 13th day. So either you take the baby to Connecticut, Pennsylvania, right? Notice I didn't say Jersey, because why bother? That's a joke, tongue in cheek. But either you do that or you do it clandestinely, because you don't have to follow the law of the land when the Torah says you have to give this bris at 8 days old, or the Torah says you have to keep kosher and they say no, you're not allowed to. So you're not allowed to slaughter anymore. So either you don't eat meat, period, or you go to Connecticut, or you do slaughter clandestinely, etc. As you get my drift. But just to spy against your country is inconceivable to me. So you're not allowed to. So hence, I don't have such a inkling, a desire to visit their graves, even though it's in my backyard. Was it anti-Semitism? So that Hoover was so adamant? Probably, because there were plenty of spies before and since. That Ames is out. Right, he's out of prison to give them the death penalty, and the only ones, yeah, there probably was death penalty, but did they deserve prison? Absolutely. Did they deserve a life imprisonment, as I believe Ames should have? Absolutely. So that's my take on it. Feel free to comment here. Feel free. Pollard got a harsher. We'll talk about Pollard in the future. Pollard got a harsher testimony, a harder sentence than Ames. Right? He did. And it was wrong. But if you're gonna give life, be equal. They all gave testimony to a foreign entity, and which is illegal. Please feel free to share, or you can view any of our classes, or review for that matter, at you can email me at rabbi@thechaicenter.com, or you can view the classes at thechaicenter.com/academy. Be well.